It's been weeks now, and Magic players dig deeper and get more and more disgusted at the companions, and we're going to talk about why. Everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and I've been pretty vocal that I am a fan of the companions. I like the gameplay, but holy crap, did I not know that I was in this tiny minority. I polled my audience both on Twitter and Facebook, and we're ranging like 70 to 85% of the people they want the companions to get the hell out of here. Leave the formats, we can do better without them, and they've got multitudes of different reasons why. And I think one thing that makes the companions so unpopular is that there are very different broad ranges of reasons why people don't like them. You could not like them for the fact that they make your deck more expensive. You may not like them because you don't like the gameplay. You may not like them because it turns Magic into Commander. So we're going to talk about all those concepts and those aspects of the companions. Let's not forget that one gigantic problem is that there's like only a handful. I'm sort of in the boat that if there were way more companions and way more variety, it would reduce a lot of the problems that people currently have. Although that might be opening like a can of worms that we may not be able to get out of if we were to do such a thing. But you look at the companions that are there's only basically like 8 companions. Or there's not many that are playable, like competitive playable. You look at Lurrus. Lurrus is by far the most played one in the Eternal formats. This thing's ridiculous. I was trying to analyze, why is this card so good? You can't say like it's an 8th card in hand. You can say that about all the other companions. What makes Lurrus so strong? It's Snapcaster Mage. For permanence. Every turn. Oh my god. How could they design this? Oh, and by the way, it has lifelink and can be splashed by 2 different colors. So this is like, the companions that exist are like way above and beyond what's playable for the other companions. So like Lurrus and Yorion are way above, more played than the other companions are. A lot of the other ones are just being splashed as an 8th card. They don't have that big of an impact on the strategy or the construction of the archetype. So so it's not a lot of variety. So let's start going on why people are so upset about the companions. And one of the first reasons is that it turns the game into Commander. And turns out most people don't really like that. Personally for me, I don't really like playing Vintage. The gameplays are like really, the play patterns are like way out of control. When one side goes off, they're really going off. I understand there's still strategy, there's still gameplay to it, but it's ridiculously high variance. I don't want to be a part of that. It doesn't feel like Magic to me. And then when nothing's happening, like literally nothing's happening. Each side blows all their resources against each other. Anyway, that gameplay is not for me. And that same thing is for like the Commander play. For people who are playing Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, they don't want to play Commander. They don't want to play. If they want to play Commander, they'll go to Commander. That's what the format is for. You've got Commander. And that has strategic implications when you're getting into Pioneer, into Modern, into Legacy, because you've got this card in your hand that you can't disrupt. You can't do anything to this zone. You can't lobotomy your opponent's sideboard away. So they've got this card that's invincible, immune to Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek. Basically any hand disruption, which normally is like the police of any of these formats, especially Modern or Pioneer. That police doesn't have any influence on these companions. So you now have like this invincible strong strategy going into these non-rotating competitive formats. And that ends up forcing people to try to play the companions. Because if you're not playing with a companion, you're at a gigantic disadvantage. You need to have that 8th card. If we even look at the modern way of playing Magic the Gathering, the modern era mostly is about card advantage. We might be moving a little bit away from that because we now see the prevalence of big mana strategies like the Titan Ramp decks, Amulet, Eldrazi Tron, but still, for the most part, it's about attrition. It's about card advantage. You still see that in the Uro Simic control decks. You still see that with Death Shadow decks. Attrition and card advantage are still a really big component to how the modern era of Magic is played. And what better way to try to undermine that or to fight against it with an 8th card in your starting hand? So if you are not playing with a companion, I mean, you're at a big disadvantage. You're at just a colossal disadvantage. You're going to play with a 7-card hand every single game? Now, some people fight back against this argument because, like, you know, if you mulligan to 6, are you automatically resigning? Well, maybe not, but if you start the game with 7 cards all the time, then you are always at that mulligan. You should look at it like that. You're always mulliganed against a deck that's playing with a companion if you start the game with a 7-card hand because you're not playing with a companion. Okay, let's say now we agree that we basically have to jam a companion. That's a problem too, because playing the companion can be expensive. I mean, just on Magic the Gathering Online, if you want to be playing with Lurrus, you're basically buying into 4 Mishra's Baubles, which is upwards or more than $200 US, pending how popular Mishra's Bauble is. I mean, upon the arrival and outbreak of Lurrus, when it was first printed on the first week, Mishra's Bauble got as high as $68. I know, because I was buying them at that time, where I was shopping and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to buy 4 of these for this. That's ridiculous. So it's putting a lot of pressure on people. Like, even if you like the companions, do you like upgrading your deck for it? Do you want to spend the extra money on those Mishra's Baubles? To the control players, do you want to buy extra Teferi Time Revelers, Jace the Mind Sculptors, and Uros so that you can get your deck to 80 cards so that you can enable Yorion? How do you feel about that? Most people don't feel very good about that. And not to mention, there's so much hate for the companions. There's now this gigantic risk. What if I buy into these cards and the companions get banned? Now what? What if I buy into Mishra's Bauble and Mishra's Bauble gets banned? Well, I'm going to lose all my money. Well, I don't want to do... So there's this gigantic fear and risk to actually buying into the cards necessary to upgrade your companion deck if you want to use that strategy. Not to mention, there's a lot of people who don't want to let go of their core cards to adjust for the companion. There's big hate coming out from the Jund community. They don't want to drop their Bloodbraid Elf, their Liliana the Veil, in order to enable their deck to play Lurrus. They are getting rid of their core cards. I mean, what are you going to do with your 4 foil Liliana the Veil now? You're going to put in your binder because now they're obsolete because they are contradicting the strategy necessary to enable Lurrus? I mean, that doesn't make people feel good. You got to put away your Street Wraith in order to play Lurrus in your Death Shadow deck? To put away your Gurmag Angler, get rid of that graveyard strategy of building it up in order to get that Gurmag Angler out there. I mean, it's a big transformation that not everyone is willing to make, and that's upsetting a lot of people. That's most certainly upsetting a lot of people who, if they want to use a companion, I mean, that's just what you're going to have to do, and it's a big roadblock. Then, of course, there is this range of people. If you cannot use a companion, you just feel shit out of luck. If you're the Blue Moon player, if you're the Blue-White Spirits player, I mean, how do you play Lurrus in Blue-White Spirits? I mean, you can't. You have to sacrifice Spell Queller, Drog Skull Captain. I mean, those are the core staples to the archetypes. And there's just no way to make the deck function or work without the companion. So there is a certain range of decks. They're like, well, there's like no way for me to adapt my deck to this companion, so I'm just left out. There's no companion for me. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of people either. So now a lot of people are very upset for many different reasons, as I've explained. It's not sitting well with the community in any of these Eternal formats. I mean, there's a big debate about, what's the difference between Brainstorm and Lurrus in Legacy, and frankly, most people are just mostly sick of Lurrus because it has such an impact on the battlefield, and the repetitive gameplay of it all is just significantly worse than, say, brainstorming every turn. It doesn't actually affect the board compared to, Lurrus itself. But there's still some debate around that as well. Of course, a lot of people just like playing with Brainstorm because it's Brainstorm. So how much longer is Wizards of the Coast going to let this happen? The reviews are super negative. 2 thumbs down, 1 star out of 5. It's not sitting well with people. It's very, very unpopular. Now, I understand that if you want to push the power level of the cards for Standard, you need to have a safety valve for what you're going to do for Modern. And I think you got to act reasonably quickly when you get enough feedback that it's unpopular. Was it right to let Hogak sit in the meta for another 1.5 months when they had an opportunity to ban it immediately? Was it right to let Oko sit in the metagame for another 1.5 months when it was clearly a problem very early on? How many times are we going to shake everything up, and there's significant outrage, and just force people to wait it out? I don't know what the ethics of that are. Because, I understand, yeah, you want to make things better for Standard. You want to push the power level of Standard. And if you do that for that sandbox sort of format, sure, that's okay. You've already designed the cards for it, and you tried to play test for it. But you can't predict what's going to happen in the non-rotating formats. What are they going to do? I think they should act a little bit faster when things are getting out of control, and the feedback is quite clear online, all over the place, where all the communities on Reddit, on Twitter, on the Facebook pages. And I hope Wizards of the Coast listens. I want people to enjoy this format. Unfortunately, companions weren't good enough. I don't know exactly what they are going to do to adjust it. A lot of people mentioned, they should take the Jim Davis approach. We should discard a card from our opening hand, or maybe just put it underneath our library, and then that will replace our starting hand with the companion, now making it more prone to being disrupted by hand disruption and negating the relevance or the advantage of starting with an 8-card hand. After all, they could do that. It's not like we've never seen rule erratas before. We've seen many changes to the legendary rule for multiple times over the history of Magic. At one time, only one person can have the card in play, and if they got it in play, you could not play it at all, and then the other person can play the card and it would actually kill the other person's card. And then now we are in a stage where both people can have a legendary permanent of the same kind, and then you can have multiple of a planeswalker, the same name, same planeswalker but different name. So the legendary rule has had many different iterations and changes over the years. They could most certainly do that for something like Companion. Let me know what your thoughts are below. What do you think should happen? Are there any concerns about Companion I did not mention? I would love to know and hear from the community. Anyway, this has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about the current state of companions in Magic.